Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final session in our fitness and wellness 4-week series for stress management. It's all come to this moment, and I'm so happy that you're here to join us. We have a great session for you tonight. It started with Garth Rule worship because worry is not good for business. We then transitioned to Joy Rich, communicate to resolve conflicts and nurture relationships. Simone Bowe did a great job, but delegate to gain, not lose control of your business. Dwayne Wallace, laugh at your mistakes today to minimize them tomorrow. Ronaldo Clark took us through sleep through the night and hustle through the day. Jaime Thompson spoke about exercising to improve your mental and physical health. Natasha Gregoire spoke about travel to experience the world beyond your shores and to multiply possibilities for your business. Insights from a global executive. Tonight, we have someone who is near and dear to my heart. I call her a friend, a confidant, so many other things. Lady Philippa Dean. And she's speaking to us about journal without fear of judgment and punishment. Philippa Dean is an inspirational empowerment speaker, teacher, author, and mental health therapist with more than a decade of experience. Philippa earned her master's degree in forensic psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. She is a member of the American Psychological Association, the Bahamas Psychological Association, and the Women and Girls Mentorship Coalition. She is also known for her advocacy and civic volunteer work. She is a volunteer counselor at the Bahamas Crisis Center, lending her voice and talents to inform and educate the Bahamian populace about the rights and issues of women and girls, particularly gender-based violence and child abuse. She's the founder of the Dignified Girl Project, a nonprofit organization that promotes menstrual equity and advocates to end period poverty, a global issue. One of Philippa's mantras is the greatest desire one could seek is to achieve to have one's actions outrun their words. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, my confidant, Miss Philippa Dean.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Leo. Thank you for all of our audience members this evening. Thank you for SPDC inviting me to share my knowledge with you. So, they've been doing for the last several weeks a series on stress management. One of the things I recognize as we adult or do the adulting thing is we forget how to be childlike. So just before I begin my official presentation, I would like to take you down memory lane. How many of you actually remember the Sunday school chorus, read your Bible and pray every day, you'll grow. Forget to read it, you shrink. How about we take a moment to remix the lyrics of that childhood song? And if we remixed it, it would go a little bit like this. Get your journal, write every day, write every day, write every day. Get your journal, write every day, and you grow, grow, grow. Neglect your journal, forget to write, forget to write, forget to write. Neglect your journal, forget to write, and you'll shrink, shrink, shrink. That's your child play for today. I am going to now share my presentation with you. I expect for it to be interactive, which means at some point, I would like for you, through my invitation, to participate. My name is Philippa Dean, as indicated previously, and I will be speaking to you on the topic of journaling without judgment and fear. Often when we hear the term journaling, we think, I don't have time for that. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a leader, I am so busy. I'm not gonna sit down and write because there's no benefit in it for me. It is my hope that at the end of this presentation, You will be able to describe how journaling helps you as an entrepreneur to prioritize problems, fears, and concerns that may be happening in the workplace. It is also my hope that you are able to demonstrate how journaling helps you as an entrepreneur to track your day-to-day stressors and your stress symptoms. I hope that you will be able to discuss how journaling helps you to identify negative thoughts and behavior patterns that may exist. You should also be able to show how journaling helps you as an entrepreneur to create opportunities for positive self-talk and how positive self-talk benefits you as an entrepreneur. And finally, you should be able to identify how journaling converts to improving your success as an entrepreneur. Experience does not equal wisdom. I would like for as many of you as possible to place in chat, how many years have you been an entrepreneur or in a leadership role? I'm going to count you down. You literally have 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So some of you have indicated that you have been in an entrepreneurial position or role for the last 14 years, the last 13 years, the last 4 years. Some of you would be considered by your colleagues or other professionals as wise due to the length of time that you've been in your post. But what I particularly like about this quote is that it says experience does not equal wisdom. Because you've been in your post for 13 years or 14 years, it doesn't necessarily mean you are wise, unless during those 13 or 14 years, the experiences that you had, you learned from them. You grew from them. You grew the people around you from them. You grew your company from them. So experience does not equal wisdom unless you consciously take time to learn from it. Have you ever? I want to ask you 3 questions. Have you ever recorded an experience as an entrepreneur or as a leader, whether that experience was good or bad? And you may have recorded it via text message, via email, via a voice note. You may have written it in a book. You may have written it on a notepad, but have you ever recorded an experience that you had during your career? If you did, good. Have you ever had an idea that you wrote down in a book, on a piece of paper, simply because you did not want to forget it, or because you wanted to brainstorm it? Have you ever? Have you ever given serious thought or consideration to a topic related to work or a situation related to work, and then you wrote about it? Right where you are, you don't have to answer in chat. I want you to answer within yourself. Yes, you know, I have. I have recorded experiences. I have written down ideas that I wanted to explore and I didn't want to forget. I have given serious thought to work-related topics. If you've answered yes to any one of these 3 questions, then I say to you, congratulations, because you've just passed Journaling 101. And it simply means recording. Most people get afraid of journaling because they think that it has strict rules, it has definite structures, it doesn't allow you to write freely, it occupies too much of your time. But truth be told, journaling is simply a process of recording your experiences. It's a process of recording your ideas and your reflections. And many of you probably don't even realize this, The most complex form of journaling that you would have done if you're an entrepreneur is preparing your business plan. Think about it. Was it not recording your ideas or your business idea? Was it not a creative process that challenged you and allowed you to brainstorm effective solutions so that you could have a successful business? Was it not an opportunity for you to explore new ways of thinking? But that's for another time. One of the differences between the business plan that you would have journaled, a complex version, versus journaling for your mental health is the fact that when you journal for mental health, it's a stress reduction tool. If we know anything about business planning and business plan writing, it's a stressful process. So today I want to focus more on how do you reduce stress through your writing. So the first question I was charged to answer for you is, how does journaling help you as an entrepreneur to prioritize your problems, your fears, and your concerns that you may have on the job? First of all, research shows that, recent research too, shows that on average, you, me, all of us, we process about 6,200 thoughts per day. Let that sit for a moment. 6,200 thoughts a day. We process that, or those. How can we prioritize then as entrepreneurs what we don't organize? How do we filter through those 6,200 thoughts to decipher what is important versus what isn't important? The first thing that you can do is organize your thoughts by writing them down. That's all journaling is. It's recording, it's writing. So you have so many thoughts going through your head, and it's difficult to mentally organize those thoughts. So the first thing you can do to prioritize them is, one, organize them through writing. So you write them down. And there are two techniques that you can use to write your thoughts. The first one is free writing. You get simply a pen and a paper or a book, and you write freely without judgment, because no one else is expected to see it. These are your personal thoughts. You write freely, whatever comes to mind. Don't you worry about punctuation, being grammatically correct. You're simply writing. And the other technique for writing is using journal prompts or using structured questions. And I've found that this works best for people who need a little bit more structure and organization in the way they operate. So they may find themselves gravitating towards this technique. The second thing is, after you've written down your thoughts, you must explore them. You cannot change what you do not confront. When you write your thoughts, you are forced to confront them. And confrontation comes through exploration. Again, you cannot change as an entrepreneur what you refuse to confront. So how do we explore what we've written? There are a set of standard questions that you can begin to ask yourself. One, what or who makes me real angry and tense and even worried or irritable sometimes? Remember, you get to write in this journal. You get to document this, whether your journal is on an app, the notes on your app, whether it's an electronic journal that you can get an app to, or whether it's an actual book or a piece of paper. It's yours. It's your free space. It's your safe space. And in it, you're writing and answering these questions. What are my thoughts usually about when I'm worried, irritated, or angry? How do I behave when I'm angry, I'm tense, or I'm irritable? How is my behavior impacting not just me, but my team and the people that I'm working with? And what can I control in this situation versus what I can't control in this situation? So as you begin to explore those questions, it will inquire or require of you absolute truth and courage to come face to face and confront how you truly feel. After you've written them down, explored them, The next thing is to categorize them. Listen, entrepreneurs are married to one say that they are the busiest people in the world. We don't have the time. That's what they often say. But I find that we make time for what we find to be important. Journaling is important. Journaling does not have to take up much more of your time. In fact, journaling can happen during a coffee break. It can happen in less than 5 minutes. So back to the course at hand, categorize the problems and the fears and the concerns that you may be having, either as urgent, important, or simply noise. How do you do that? Ask yourself the following questions. You will realize that I'm sharing structure with you and questions with you, which will make it easier. Having a set of structured questions saves you time when you're journaling. 1, ask yourself, what is important? Sometimes our minds convince us that everything is important, but the truth be told, not everything is important. Well, everything may be important, but there are some things that are important now. So that's how you determine urgency. What is important now? The second thing is, what is important with a closer deadline? Then you ask yourself, what is important with the furthest deadline? Put those in your calendar. That helps you to organize, and it also helps you to prioritize. Once you've done that, go a little bit deeper. You want to reflect. You want to continue to explore. 1, what is having the greatest impact on my mental health at this point? Remember, we're talking about the problems that you face, the fears that you have, the concerns that you have. What is impacting my mental health the greatest at this moment? That's urgent. What is having the least impact on my mental health? That's important. What is having absolutely no impact on my mental health or my performance? That's noise. So we know what category to place that in. That's how you use journaling to prioritize your problems, fears, and concerns as an entrepreneur. Organize by writing them down. Explore your thoughts, your problems, your fears, your concerns. 3, categorize them as urgent, important, or simply noise. Next, I'm going to invite you to engage with me at this time. How do we journal to track our day-to-day stress symptoms and our triggers? Again, keep in mind, journaling can take only 5 minutes. Most of you have come to the end of your workday. So this is something that you can actually do right now, wherever you are, once you have a piece of paper and a pen, and I'm not going to ask you to share it because I want you to be able to journal this, go through this activity without judgment and without punishment. So right where you are, walk through this activity with me. Journaling allows you to keep records. If you are an entrepreneur, you already know the importance of record keeping, especially if you happen to be a client of SPDC, right? Record keeping is extremely important, and that's what journaling does. Journaling affords you the opportunity to keep a record of what is causing stress to you. And you can figure that out with 3 simple standard questions at the end of each day, as you're driving to work, or if you're taking a 5-minute break in the parking lot just so that traffic dies down, or you're passing by the beach and you spontaneously stop. You can ask yourself this at the end of the day. 3 questions or 3 things to do. List 3 things that caused you tension today. I want you to think about it in your mind as you listen to this presentation. Reflect on your day for a moment. What are 3 things that caused you tension today on the workplace, or during a meeting, or during an interaction with a colleague? Was there anything that caused you strain or caused you pressure today? Once you've identified what those 3 things are, your next step is to rate them on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being that board meeting, that caused me I'll rate it about a 4 in terms of the stress or the pressure that I felt in there. Whatever else you identify, you go ahead and you put a number to it. That's how you begin to track. And you will do this over a 7-day period, correct? At the end of, well, before we get to the 7th day, You have identified the 3 things that caused you stress today, which is Wednesday. After you've done that, the second part of your activity or your journaling exercise would be to circle any feeling or behavior that happened during or after your stressful moment. So I was in the board meeting. I was called on to deliver a presentation that I had no idea I was supposed to deliver. That created great stress for me. So I'll rank that as a 10. And during this board meeting, when I'm being called upon and I'm trying to wing it, I am feeling anxious. So you'd circle anxious. After the presentation, you were reprimanded by your supervisor. It may have been an oversight. After the reprimand by your supervisor, you continue to feel symptoms and emotions, feelings or behaviors. You get worried. Is this gonna play against you during your evaluation, your annual assessment or evaluation? You find that your breathing changes, your heart rate changes. So what this forces you to do is pay attention, to be aware of what your body's saying to you, what it's feeling when you're under stress. So the first part of the activity, if I go back, it says identify what your stresses were and then rate them. After you've identified them and rated them, your next step is to circle the feelings and behaviors that came in that moment or after the moment of stress. If you do this over a 3 to 7 day period, you will have sufficient information to identify a pattern. Patterns are so important because once you've identified a pattern, you're able to say, these are the things that trigger me. These are how I respond to those triggers. What can I do to begin to minimize the triggers? Or what are some healthy ways I can reduce the stressful symptoms that I'm feeling? Next slide. Journaling to identify negative thoughts. I'm going to stay here for a few minutes. I hope I am still on time. Journaling to identify negative thoughts. Here's why I find this extremely important. I am a strong advocate for the theory that the way we think affects the way we feel, and the way we feel impacts the way we behave. So if there are thought patterns that you have as an entrepreneur that may be creating feelings within you that are not creating optimal performance, then you need to identify what those thoughts are and you need to address them. So journaling keeps a record. We've already established that. It records thoughts, it records feelings, it records behaviors. It helps to recognize patterns. With many of the professionals I work with, many of them have small businesses and micro businesses. And one thing I recognize is that all of them have a negative thought pattern or category that they fall into. And once they are aware of what this pattern is, they are able to work towards reframing it. Some of the most common negative thought patterns that we have come or I have come across is the all or nothing kind of thinking, where things are either black or they're white. No grays exist. So as I go through these, I want you to self-assess and identify whether or not any of these are familiar to you. Journaling helps you if you don't know if you have a negative thought pattern or not. Journaling will help you to identify that. What I suggest is that when you journal, when you write, whether it be in an app, whether it be on your laptop or your desktop, whether it's on a piece of paper or within a book, always keep on hand a highlighter. So you write, and then when you go over or reflect on what you've written, identify patterns. For example, one of the thought patterns that are very common is all or nothing, the black or white thinking. When you are done writing your thoughts, look for words like never always, completely, nothing, everything. Whenever you see those words popping up in your journal, I want you to highlight them. Because it's quite possible that you may have a black and white frame of thinking in a negative way. And how this translates is, for example, and I want you to think of examples as I share these. You may have a person who made a mistake on an order for a customer, and that person chooses to think, oh my gosh, I made this mistake. I always mess up. I always do things wrong. I never get things right. I must be a bad employee. All or nothing thinking. Another one is overgeneralization, which is quite similar to the all or nothing. And the overgeneralization, it says that one thing happens, and then you say that it always happens. Or something doesn't happen and you say, oh, it never happens. So you were expecting to win Employee of the Month and you did not. So you overgeneralize and say, you know what, I never win anything on this job. They never recognize me for anything. Overgeneralization, a negative thought pattern. And sometimes the people around us who we work with on our teams are better able to recognize these thought patterns that they have. And sometimes they would say things like, why do you always say stuff like? If you are that aware and that in tune to what they're saying, you will recognize cause for concern. The second one is jumping to conclusions. And when we jump to conclusions, we often don't have sufficient evidence. You conclude something, but you don't have all the evidence that what you're concluding is absolutely so. Then we have magnification and minimization. Magnification is when you blow things out of proportion, right? It was not called for. Some people may say, oh my goodness, you're so extra, or you're always running out. And then we have labeling, where you don't allow yourself grace and to make mistakes. In the beginning, when I shared the example of the generalization or the all or nothing, you label yourself. You make a mistake, so you say, I am stupid. I make dumb choices, or I am dumb, or I am a poor employee, or I am not performing well. Then personalization. This is the one that I find to be most common among the people who I work with, where things happen and they personalize it. They take full responsibility, even for things that are out of their control. Or you have them playing the blame game, where they refuse to take responsibility for their errors and they look for other persons to carry the blame. These are all negative thought patterns. You are not going to identify them unless, one, someone brings them to your attention, or you write your thoughts and then you reflect on what you've written and you pay attention for certain cues or examples in your work life where these things may be showing up. Okay. Journaling as a form of improving or identifying or creating an opportunity for positive self-talk. Now, research shows us how people address themselves during self-talk. It affects how they feel and how they perform. If you recognize athletes, for example, before a game, when they're in the locker room and they're preparing and they're getting all hyped, look at how they talk to themselves and what they say. Look at most sports enthusiasts or athletes. The self-talk is always so positive. The research actually shows that when you speak positively to yourself, you feel better about yourself. And when you feel better about yourself, you perform better, you show up better. So we've also discovered through studies that When you use second person pronouns such as you, yourself, yours, and you use your name, it helps to regulate your thoughts and your feelings and your behavior, particularly under social or stressful circumstances. What I like about journaling is that it integrates two skills, important skills: writing and your social emotional skills. That's what journaling allows you to do. In your workplace, you may have been hearing the terms emotional intelligence thrown all over the place. Well, journaling assists or aids in promoting or increasing or improving your emotional intelligence. So I want to walk you very quickly through an exercise, and I'm going to be wrapping up shortly because I know my time is gone. Journaling helps you to create an avenue of self-talk, reframing. I'm going to invite those of you who have the opportunity to participate in chat. What I've done is listed 3, right, sentences that speak to negative self-talk. These sentences can be reframed when you journal them. So if you go back to where we spoke about negative thoughts, and once you've identified them in your journal writing, you can pull those out and say to yourself, these are the thoughts that I have that are usually negative towards self. Once you've done that, you can learn to reframe them. Reframing simply means taking something negative and rewording it in a positive way. So I am going to invite anyone, I see there are 21 of you on the Zoom. I would like to invite you to just choose one and positively reframe it. So imagine that this is something that you would have written in your journal for today. And you want to now begin mitigating negative self-talk by creating new self-talk, positive self-talk habits. How would you reframe the sentence, I'll never meet this deadline? How would you reframe, my idea is not good enough, it's not worth trying? How would you reframe that? How would you reframe, I should be better at this task by now, but I'm not? I may never be. How would you reframe those? Very good. Miss Felice Bethel has said, I can beat this deadline. Very good. That's reframing negative self-talk and now creating an opportunity for positive self-talk. Maisie Thompson says, I'll just have to try some other way. Very good. Do we have anybody else that would like to share? So I'll never meet this deadline. No, I'll beat this deadline. I realize that it's coming on me. I realize that it's close, but you know what? I can beat this. Facebook comment, Portia McCoy says, I will meet this deadline. Very good. I won't meet this deadline today, but maybe tomorrow. Very good reframing, Leo. Miriam is going to be her own cheerleader. Miriam says, look, I got this. Wonderful. So thank you very much for participating and sharing that. There is, before I do questions, or the floor is open to question, there was something that I wanted to share. And it's the question of, how does journaling convert to success for you as an entrepreneur? So I must have deleted that slide, but I can definitely share it with you. So I came across this anonymous quote that says, change your mind, change your income. I'll say it again. Change your mind, change your income. So what journaling does is provides opportunities for you to change your mindset, to explore your mindset, to improve your mindset, So when there is, journaling helps you to organize your thoughts. It helps you to reflect and generate creative ideas, generate solutions. These are all critical parts of being a successful entrepreneur. And it is going to equate to being a happier person. So you may not see directly dollar signs, right? Or the increase, but indirectly, there are going to be thought patterns, feelings, and behaviors that you have, solutions you come up with, creative ideas that you come up with that's going to boost your sales, right? Establish you in the market, maybe put you in line with or before or in front of your competitors, which will directly equate to cha-ching, ching, figures and cash increases. So if the way you think and feel affects your performance, once you begin to organize the way you think and feel and mitigate negative feelings and thoughts with positive ones through journaling and journaling in a way that best suits you, then you will begin to indirectly see the changes and the benefits through your relationship with your team, your relationship and service to your customers, and eventually your bank account. The final question for me this evening was, how has journaling converted to success in my career? Well, people don't believe me, but I think I have about, like, this is just 3 of them, and then there's one on the here, there are 4. So these are all journals, like some of the many journals that I have. So journaling has always been a part of my life, as I'm a writer and a speaker. And in this came many, or through this came many creative ideas for businesses, because I am a micro and small business entrepreneur myself. And it helps me in the service that I deliver to my clients. It helps me to show up as a best version of me. And above all, being a therapist, I always have to remind my clients that I too am human, that I too put into practice so much of the things that they do, or I encourage them to do, what the science says they should do. And one of those things is journaling, because I have to mind dump or mental dump as well, because I am usually someone or a place, a safe space where people come and they dump their stressors. So journaling has and continues to be an important tool in my life as a therapist and as a business person. So I would like to say to you, change your mind, right? Change the brain, change the mind, change your income. And always remember that experience does not equate to wisdom unless you consciously learn from those experiences. Journaling is one avenue. You get to identify your experience, explore your experience, learn from your experience to become a better entrepreneur, a better human being, a better family member, a better family friend, a better contributor to our larger society. Thank you so much, Mr. Rule, for hosting. Thank you so much, SBDC, for having me share this wealth of information this evening with your audience. Have a good evening. I'm open to questions.
Good evening, Miss Philippa Dean. Thank you so much for that wealth of information and that amazing presentation. I definitely would say it's something very timely, near and dear to my heart. I find myself I've started journaling since 2014. I have this funny perspective or a funny stance where I always say that I want to be able to write my autobiography myself, so I'm starting from then. So, and
Wonderful.
one of the best things and one of the biggest benefits that I love the most is that even now, when you're able to reflect on those on those writings, and you find yourself, let's say it just so happens to be the same day 6 years ago, and it for me it provides such a moment to reflect, because I always say like, wow, imagine what was my stressors then, or what had me riled up then, or what was I going what kind of weighed on me then and what that doesn't now. So I love that the most, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for this presentation this evening.
You're welcome.
For now,
You're welcome.
our question and answer segment, everybody, as we all know, please feel free to place your questions aside either the Zoom chat or even our Facebook comments on our Facebook Live platform. At this moment now, I'm just going to open the floor up for questions, and we'll start with our first Zoom question here. So our opening question says, why is all or nothing thinking negative?
And that's a great question. Due to time's constraints, I could not go into depth with it, but the all or nothing thinking becomes negative when it's associated with failure, right?
Okay.
For example, you have a person who says, you have a colleague or a team member who says that, okay, I had to create a presentation to present to my department head. I did not score well on that presentation. And because I did not score well on that presentation, I must be one of the worst members of this team. That's a practical example of how someone would use an all or nothing frame of thinking in a negative way. The person who asks that question, I would like for that person, if they are able to just type in chat or in comment how they perceive the all or nothing thinking to be one that is considered positive.
So, Philippa, I can quickly just tell you, because it's too much to type. So I often tell people that I'm all or nothing, and that means I decide what I put my energy into. And so if I commit to doing something, I'm going to give it 100% or 200%. But if I'm not interested in something, I'm not going to waste any energy into it. And I'll just say, well, no, I'm not interested. So that's
Right.
how I typically use all or nothing.
Or nothing. Okay, wonderful. So to that regard, it's not being used in the same context. When you speak, and that, Miss Felice, calls for great self-awareness on your part, right? Understanding your capacity to deliver. So it's either all or nothing. If I can't deliver 100% of my skill set, my expertise, and who I am, then I'm not going to do it at all. It takes honesty. It definitely takes some form of reflection and self-awareness to know this about yourself. But this is not the way that I am using the term all or nothing or black or white thinking as it pertains to a negative mindset. Thank you so much for sharing. Mr. Ferguson?
Yes, thank you so much, Felice, for that nice banter just now. Going back to our Zoom chat here, we have another question that says, and it's actually a funny one, it says, journaling seems feminine in nature. What do you recommend for males in relation to journaling? Can creating daily voice recordings of your thoughts as a male be considered journaling?
Yes. So I'm happy that that question was asked. It's not, let me clear the air, it's not a feminine thing, it's an anybody kind of thing. But I do realize that people are different, and the modes through which people choose to communicate or to self-express, or let's say self-express, is different. That's why journaling doesn't have to take the form of a beautiful pink covered, purple covered, floral covered book. You can do it on a notepad. You can do it via an app. All or most of our smartphones have a notes app. You could do it there. Or yes, you can actually do voice recordings. People have also committed to journaling using photos and pictures. So most people would think that you have to journal using words or writing. Some people use images as a way to express what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and how they're behaving. And additionally, journaling does not have to be like morning pages where you're writing freely on 3 pages. Journaling could sometimes be just one short sentence or 3 short sentences, right? So don't consider or try not to consider journaling an act that most females do, because females aren't the only ones that have thoughts, that have emotions, and that have behaviors that could affect how they show up in the world, how they show up as entrepreneurs, how they engage with people on their team, how they engage with their customers. So I would advise any male who's thinking that this is feminine, then if it works for you, get a book that looks more masculine. Or if it works for you, record it through a voice recorder. Or if you prefer just to open up a Word document or some form of other app, writing app on your software, on your laptop that has a password, then use that. You just find a way that's best for you. Remember, the topic is journaling without judgment, right? And without punishment. So at the end of the day, you do what suits you best. Mr. Ferguson?
Thank you for that response, Ms. Dean. We have another question here in our Zoom chat that says, why is Black or white thinking negative? Doesn't this help with quick decision making?
Why is Black or white thinking negative? Doesn't it help with
Quick decision making.
quick decision making?
Yes.
So again, I go back to how I use the term, right? It's used when someone is dwelling in their failure, when they've generalized or they have labeled themselves as a failure and they're not in a mode where they are using Black or white thinking as a means to produce solutions or see a different perspective. They're simply dwelling in their failure. Not I failed, so next time I can do better. This is how I can do better. Let me begin to explore ways how I can do better.
Thank you for that answer. We have another question here that says, sometimes thoughts and experiences are painful to relive through writing them down. For instance, a traumatic life experience that persons may not want to be able to write or read about. So what are your recommendations for this method of journaling in instances like this?
This is an excellent question. And I would advise not to journal in isolation if you have identified as a person who has adverse childhood or life experiences. Again, if you identify as someone who has had adverse childhood or adult experiences or traumatic experiences, do not journal in isolation. I would always suggest someone who is working through trauma to see a professional. Allow a professional therapist or psychologist to guide you through the trauma and your healing journey. What we understand as professionals in the industry of mental health is that you can definitely re-victimize a person. A person can also be re-traumatized through mere conversation, not even through journaling or writing and reliving the experience, but simply through talking through the experience. That's why it's recommended that it's done through guided interaction with a professional or structured interaction with a professional. So if you know that journaling is going to be a trigger for you, then I do not suggest you do it.
Thank you for that response. We have another question here that asks, how do you get over the fear of an invasion of privacy and start journaling authentically again after someone has broken your trust and read your journals without your permission?
I love the question. So just by show of hands, so I can't see none of you, just raise your hand where you are. Have you had a diary when you were growing up? And your sister or your brother or your mommy or somebody found a diary? Macy put a hand up so quick. You remember the diary that had the little lock and key? I always wondered how in the world my sister got my diary open and it had a little key. But I think for most of us, it is a common experience if we've been persons who kept journals or diaries at some point someone invaded our privacy, unfortunately. And that doesn't speak to you, but it speaks to the person who invades your privacy, not respecting privacy or not respecting boundaries. So because it is a space in which you hold the most intimate details of your experiences and your feelings, it is treasure, it is gold. And when someone violates your privacy and goes and reads this, and in most cases they use it against you, that can be a traumatic experience. That can be a bitter experience. Trust can be broken. So now you feel as though, you know what, I'm gonna write, but I'm not gonna write so much in depth. I'm not gonna reflect so much in depth. One of my clients, she shared with me, she's not an adult, and she shared that this had happened to her. And what she now does when she journal is she use pseudonyms. Is that the right word, Leo? Like she used AKA names, right? And I think she doesn't write in depth, she says, because she lives in a space where there are a bunch of people and people just explore. If you, how do you rebuild that trust with journaling? I would say keep your journal somewhere where persons are less likely to find it. This may be a little bit far out, but I would say maybe you have a locker at work that you alone have the key for. Maybe you have a desk at work that has a lock, or maybe you have some safe in your home that only you have access to, or your stuff. I would lock it away, or I would hide it in a place where someone is less likely to look. For example, we are so famous for hiding things in our underwear drawer. You know, the top drawer, the underwear drawer, we always got something in there, right? Or we always hiding something in the back of the closet and behind all of those clothes or under the mattress, right? So these are common spaces where people know where to hide stuff. So I would not hide them there. I would probably hide it in a spot used to, that's actually the nosy person in my house who might be looking. I'll probably hide it somewhere in their room or in their space where they may not look for it. Or I'll keep it in my car, locked away in the glove compartment. Most glove compartments have a key. But if you find that is just too risky to do it this way, then put it in your phone, because most phones have a fingerprint to unlock. Most phones have a passcode, number code to unlock. And there are literally digital apps that you can get from the App Store that has locks. And your phone is so personal and so intimate. We usually don't leave it all around. And if we do, someone has to have our exact print to open it or to know our password to open it. But then you have a second password, which is the actual password that's attached to your digital app to get into it. So if you want to take those measures of security, maybe that might be a start to help you regain and rebuild trust to authentically journaling again. Someone said that's why they still have their information in their head.
Listen, I always say the best kept places is definitely in my head for sure.
But there comes the emotional overwhelm, right? I know that so many of you in leadership roles and as entrepreneurs, I know you feel the overwhelm that exists. Personally, I'm married to an entrepreneur, risk taker, big risk taker, and the dude can't sleep sometimes because the brain don't shut off. It's just going. And I just asked him, how do you organize it? How do you prioritize it? How do you mental dump? And he says, I just don't. So I need to take this recording and share this with him.
I'm sure he'll definitely benefit from this for sure.
But he is a male and he doesn't necessarily want to journal. He calls his business plans journals. So if there's something or some thought that's going on in his head, he just writes the ideas, hashes them out, brainstorms them. Some of them just sit there. Some of them take legs and they grow wings and they soar.
Well, listen, I always say that we always have these moments to learn and take our tips and tricks, and that's what the stress management technique is for. So I hope that
Mhm.
he definitely takes some techniques from this evening's stress management
Mhm.
session. So going on to our final question for the evening, we have a Facebook comment here that says, "Is there a proper way to journal to avoid just rambling?"
Mm. So thank you so much for that question, and I'll make it very quick because I know some persons are excited about the trivia this evening. Um, if you recall in one of the slides, I said that there are two techniques. Well, there are many techniques and styles and forms to journaling, but two that I highlighted was one with structured questions. The structured questions are what you would use to help you to avoid rambling, especially for entrepreneurs who have limited time. I don't like to say no time, who have limited time. It helps to bring structure and it helps to bring focus, and that aids with performance. Then you have a style that's called free writing. And free writing is usually for those persons who just want to ramble, who just want to mental dump. So I hope that helps um, with your question. And please note that there are blank journals out there that allows you to free write. And then there are prompted journals as well. One thing I did not get to share in the moment when we talked about positive self-talk, journaling is not always about negative emotions and thoughts and behaviors. Journaling can also be about taking moments to identify gratitude. Gratitude has been proven to improve attitude, mindset, as well as motivation and performance. So there are gratitude journals that exist out there, and those gratitude journals have prompts. A gratitude journal is very simple, where it only asks the question, today I am grateful for. And you reflect on your day and you identify a person, a thing that may have happened to you, through you, for you, or by you that you are grateful for. And that also helps with creating a positive mindset as well as positive thinking. That's one way to mitigate negative thoughts. And this works specifically for persons who may be experiencing depression and anxiety as well.
Ms. Philippa Dean, thank you so much for closing out our stress management technique session this evening. I'm now going to pass it over to Mr. Leo Roll as he gets ready for the trivia segments and I'm closing our session.
Philippa Dean, always a wealth of knowledge. It was truly excellent. I'll figure out a way to start journaling eventually, but I'll probably take Mr. Dean's tip in using business plans and business ideas first and then eventually branch into it. But I do love the idea of photo journaling, as I said. But thank you so much, Philippa. Let me move on to the trivia, as I know everyone is anxiously waiting. But before I get to our trivia for this evening, given that this is our last session, I want you to remember that we are still offering free screenings for Doctors Hospital. It's ongoing. The link is attached to our website, so you can feel free to go and sign up so that you can get your free screening while we are running our fitness and wellness initiative. Additionally, if you missed any of our 8 sessions, whether it be Garth Rowe, Joy Rich, Simone Bolt, D. Wayne Wallace, Ronaldo Clark, Jaime Thompson, Natasha Gregoire, or of course, Lady Philippa Dean, you can find all of them on our social media handles, and you can simply go and watch them if you want to hear about what was discussed that evening. My final thing before I get to the trivia is I have an announcement to make. As you know, we have a number of initiatives that are on stream for the year. Our first was our renewable energy initiative, and then we went into our creative entrepreneur initiative, jumped into the women entrepreneurs initiative, and now we're in our fitness and wellness initiative. And originally there was a cash prize, or still is a grant opportunity for primarily for the trainers who have our fitness program going on. And we decided as an executive team today that we will now create or will have a grant opportunity that's tied to the fitness and wellness initiative. And so starting next week, Friday, the opportunity should be linked or should go off. And entrepreneurs who are in the fitness and wellness industry or impact the fitness and wellness industry will have the opportunity to access up to $5,000 in grant funding through this initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening. I look forward to seeing your applications and have a good night.